Welcome in to the New Orleans Saints podcast, hosted by Erin Summers and John DeShazier. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers who cover the team on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your hosts, Erin Summers and John DeShazier.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers, joined by John DeShazier. We have a big game this weekend before the bye week. We'll be up in Minnesota facing the 5-4 Vikings. The Saints now alone atop the NFC South, also at 5-4. What do you think the biggest challenge for the Saints going into this game is going to be, John?
The thing is, what really kind of bedeviled this team for the last 3-4 weeks is a mobile quarterback. They've got a guy who can run, and the defense has started slow. Part of them starting slow, obviously, is, the charting of the first 15 plays, and you're trying to get a feel-out process. But you're dealing with a quarterback who can extend plays, and that's never good for any defense, and not just the Saints, but not for any defense. And so that's been really what's bothering this team defensively the last 4 games, and that's what's going to be an issue on Sunday unless they can control it.
Quarterback Josh Dobbs up there in Minnesota, coming from Arizona. Minnesota now is going to be starting their third straight different quarterback in 3 weeks' time. So they've had a lot of changes up there. However, they've still won the last 4 games straight. What are they doing well?
Well, I think they're just a team that's pulled together. Now, the passing game is still pretty good, even though Kirk Cousins went out. Kirk Cousins was the quarterback for the first 2 of those. So it's gone pretty well, even though now they're into the backup quarterbacks. But when you've got receivers who can get open, minus Justin Jefferson, let's put that one out because he's not going to be playing on Sunday. But they still have a really good complementary receiving core. And if you can have guys who can get open and you can run the little ball a little bit, and again, when you have a quarterback who can move around, that kind of levels the playing field a little bit. Even though Kirk Cousins wasn't a scrambler, so to speak, he was a guy who can move around and extend plays. And if you've got that kind of guy in the NFL, you can scramble around and move enough for your receivers to be able to get open. And I think they've schemed pretty well. Now, having the guy come in in the middle of last week on Wednesday, and really not even know anybody's name, Joshua Dobbs, and then to not know anybody's name and to go out and play a game on Sunday is almost unheard of. I don't even know if you can do that a whole lot with defensive linemen who have like an assignment. When you're talking about a quarterback, that's something where you basically almost have to kind of dumb it down, and it's like ABCs and as rudimentary as it can be, and yet he led a comeback win against the Falcons. Thank goodness, because that put the Saints in the first place in the NFC South. But it's something that you just don't hear a lot about with quarterbacks. So he's obviously a smart guy. He's an aerospace engineer major, I think he was at Tennessee or something like that, a literal rocket scientist. And so to be able to go out in a situation like that and not really even know guys' names and kind of draw it up in the dirt or draw it up in the turf, it is phenomenal. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it this week with a good week of practice and familiarity. And again, how the Saints can handle him.
Yeah. There are definitely some areas that needed to be cleaned up because, yes, he was new. He didn't know the players. He didn't take any snaps at practice, had never taken a handoff from the center. Fumbled 3 times, lost 2 of those. So I'm sure there are things that are going to be a little bit cleaner on their end. You mentioned some of their offensive weapons, and the biggest one now without Justin Jefferson might be their tight end in TJ Hawkinson. He leads all tight ends in receptions, and he's second in receiving yards. Alongside him, though, has been rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison, who is playing phenomenal. He's got 7 touchdowns on the season. How do the Saints limit them? Because the Saints secondary has been playing very well.
Well, the secondary can only play well if the front 7 does its job. I mean, you got to be able to get to the quarterback some. And even though people are saying the Saints aren't coming up with sacks and, they're not coming up with this and that on the front, what they are doing is getting quarterbacks a little bit nervous and getting them off their spots. You don't end up with 12 interceptions just out of the blue, just out of coverage. A lot of that has to do with what's happening up front. And so they've been able to do that up front. If you got Addison, well, now you can kind of pick your poison because Paulson Adebo's playing great at cornerback. He's the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. We know Marshawn Lattimore is at the other cornerback. So you can kind of pick your poison. And even if you want to put him in the slot, Alontae Taylor is pretty solid there. So the Saints have what you want in the secondary from that standpoint. And if Hockenson is a guy who might be able to give you some issues, well, you've also got safeties, Tyrann Mathieu. You've also got a linebacker in Demario Davis and Pete Werner. So you feel, if you're the Saints, you probably feel pretty good with your coverage there. Again, it's just a matter of, can you get to Dobbs and get him off his spots and maybe get him on the ground. He was sacked, I think, 5 times in 4 games when he was with Arizona. So, but again, 66 yards on 7 carries, I think last week, and a touchdown. But if you can get to him, hey, you might be able to get him to put it on the ground. And that's what happened a couple of times against Atlanta.
On the flip side, looking at the Saints offensively against the Minnesota defense, they have allowed 21 points per game, 328 yards. I mean, it's not terrible, but they definitely can get to the quarterback. They have 24 sacks on the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. But I mean, it's kind of middle of the road defense. So, 21 points a game and everything. But look, the Saints have shown if they can get to 21, 24, that might be enough. Yeah. And hopefully that'll be enough against the Vikings. We thought that the Saints wouldn't have many issues offensively against the Bears because the Bears were giving up, 350 plus yards a game. And, it just seemed like a Bears defense that was ripe to be beaten up on. And yet they had enough against the Saints. Now, the Saints were pretty good in the red zone, 3 for 5, and they've been doing much, much, much better at that the last couple of games. But it's also a situation where, you just don't want to take for granted and say, well, they'll be able to move the ball, they'll be able to score. They've got to be able to get in positions to do those things, and hopefully if they get back in the red zone, they can run the ball well again. They've done that fantastic the last couple of weeks, especially with Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. So you'd like to see that continue. And you also like to see Derek Carr, because Derek Carr's got 3 red zone touchdown passes in the last couple of weeks, which is something that obviously is a positive because those were scores that this team was not getting. And I think Derek Carr's getting a whole lot better about getting the ball out of his hands and being accurate with it. And if you've got everybody doing what they're supposed to do, which is what this defense was saying for like 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and you just didn't see a lot of it. If everybody's doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, it can be a pretty decent offense.
The Vikings blitz more than any team does in the league by a lot. How do you think the Saints are going to have to approach that offensively?
That might be an issue because, and maybe it's an issue that the Saints have kind of figured out because the last 3 games, they've only given up 2 sacks. Now, we know in the first 3 games, the first 11 quarters, they gave up a sack per quarter, but they seem to have kind of figured that out. But when a team blitzes that much, that means they're sending extra people. So Jamal Williams, who was fantastic in pass pro last week against Chicago, Alvin Kamara, running backs. You also have your tight ends that are going to have to help out, whether that be Foster Moreau or whether that be Juwan Johnson. But you're going to have some extra guys, and sometimes there might be a free guy that Derek Carr is simply going to have to beat. Am I that? Maybe not outrun the guy, but he's got to get rid of the ball. He's got to be the one to take care of that guy who's the free guy, because the free guy can come in and either sack, fumble, strip, that kind of thing. So Derek Carr's got to be wary. But you expect the Saints to probably keep in some extra bodies early to kind of combat that. And if you're able to do that, because a team that blitzes that much, they're going to leave some gaping holes if you can just get enough time to get the ball off.
There are some stats out there that mean absolutely nothing, but people talk about them. Like the Saints have scored 6 more points on the road this season than at home. So whatever that means. But one stat, the Saints are 18-1 when Taysom Hill has 7 carries or more in a game. They're 3-0 this season when that happens. Is more Taysom just a cheat code?
I don't necessarily know that. I mean, because think about it. If it's 7 carries from his own 20, that's different than, if you got 7 carries from the 45 in.
Yeah. Because
you're in scoring positions, and a decent amount of Taysom's carries come in the scoring zone where, hey, he's, it's 1st and goal from the 2, and you're sending in Colin Saunders to be your extra fullback, and you got the heavy jumbo lineup out there, and Taysom can run it in. So, but there are some situations where he does get it at his own 35, and you put him out there. But mostly it's advantageous when you're doing it on the plus side of the field because it feels a little bit more like you're running downhill. I think when you're on the other side, I think you want to have those opportunities more so for Derek Carr, unless it's 3rd and 1. or 2nd and 2 or something like that, where you put Taysom out there and you get that extra offensive player, and then you have to defend all 11 players if you're on defense. But I think a lot of it happens when you're going in, and if you can get in those situations where you're on the plus side, Taysom is one of those players, we've seen it for years, where as a running back or as a running quarterback, folks don't want to hit him once he gets past that initial line of scrimmage. If he gets to the second level, it's hard to get him on the ground, and defensive backs are not big enough to really frighten him. He'll just run right over a dude if he needs to. And he's too fast for linebackers. He'll run past people. So, when you get him in the plus situations, I think, you get up to 7, 8, 9 carries, because those are valuable carries. They're in the scoring zone, and it probably means points are going to be scored.
You mentioned Colin Saunders. Are we going to see less of him in goal line situations because Adam Prentice is back?
No. Because it's something that works. Now, if it didn't work, that'd be one thing. But it's proven to be, when you get on, 3rd and goal from the 1, or 1st and goal from the 1, or whatever in goal from the 1, you send Colin Saunders in at fullback, and you've got the eligible tight end who's going to be Landon Young or somebody, and you've got your offensive line, and you probably take out a tight end and stick in another offensive lineman. Everybody out there is beefy. And then Taysom comes in, and he's 230, 240. So if you're Colin Saunders, and we see Colin, I don't know what he's listed at. I think he's listed at 320 something or whatever. That's probably not exactly accurate. He's probably a little bit higher than that. And if you're Colin Saunders, you're coming through, who wants to get in front of him? Nobody. And no offense to Adam Prentice, but Adam Prentice is a guy that, if you're a linebacker, you see Adam Prentice, you might feel like you can take him. You see Colin Saunders coming in there, and you're trying to figure out how to get around him. You're not going to take on that block head on. It's a successful play. It's going to be a successful play if the Saints run it, because they're in positions to where you've got your biggest guys out there, and you got a big guy like Colin moving forward downhill, and folks don't want to get in his way. And if I'm the Saints, I'm going to milk that like the Philly tush push, the Philly brotherly shove, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to milk it as long as I can.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens on Sunday as the Saints take on the Vikings. Would be nice to get a win heading into the bye and then just keep things rolling.
Yeah, be 3 in a row, so we're looking forward to it.
And if you haven't heard, the Saints are teaming up with the Atlanta Falcons to help those affected by ALS in a couple upcoming games. The two franchises are hosting a 50-50 raffle during both of their head-to-head matchups this season, with proceeds going towards Team Gleason and Tackle ALS. The initiative is an opportunity to contribute to the missions of Saints legend Steve Gleason and Falcons legend Tim Green. To give us some insight into how the raffle came about and what the proceeds will be going to, we have Executive Director for Team Gleason, Blair Casey, here. Casey also chairs the Technology Advisory Committee for Team Gleason. Blair, thank you so much for joining me on the New Orleans Saints podcast. I was a little taken aback when I saw that the Saints were going to be partnering with the Falcons on something, because that's just not something that we tend to do. But why is the 50-50 raffle with Tim Green and Team Gleason important? How did it come about?
I think it came about because of the Falcons and the Saints and their historic rivalry, right? If you look back, it's a rivalry that's not just been in the division, but it's been a league-wide rivalry. That being said, you look at the two individuals that you mentioned and organizations that they represent, and Steve Gleason and Tim Green, Tackle ALS and Team Gleason. They're individuals in a community, right? But they're also individuals of a larger organization that, really is community-based, which is the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. And so I think it says a lot about the leadership, right? I think it says a lot about the organizations. And we, as Team Gleason, are proud to be involved with this because, our services, as well as, what Tackle ALS is doing for the future of research and treatments, it's necessary for people living with ALS today. And it's necessary for the future of what the landscape looks like when diagnosed, if diagnosed with ALS.
What is the relationship between Steve Gleason and Tim Green?
So the relationship is they're rivals. No, I'm kidding. They have actually been friends for some time. If you look at what Steve's accomplished on the field and off the field, Tim is very similar, right? Tim is a lawyer. He's written books. And he's a driver of change as it relates to getting more funding and resources and awareness towards the Healy platform trials and MGH. Steve has done the same thing, but his focus has been on helping people with the now needs and advancing technologies and equipment to keep people independent and mobile. So whether it's on the field in their playing style or off the field pre-ALS or post-ALS, they have a lot in common.
So for the 50-50 raffle, the benefits are going to be going to their two organizations of choice.
Correct.
How is Team Gleason going to use that money? In what ways do they continue to kind of just expand the treatment for ALS?
So Team Gleason focuses on providing and advancing equipment and technology. We are strictly helping people that are living with the disease today while we advance access to solutions that are yet to come. The Healy platform trials it's a treatments, research. We're very different. And so these monies and this funding will allow us to continue to help the growing amount of people that are diagnosed with ALS. We're not specific to New Orleans or Louisiana. We help people in every state. We're getting between 500 and 600 requests a month for our services. And so Steve has set a lofty goal for us to make sure that everybody who has ALS, he wants us to get to 70-90% of the ALS population over the next 5 years. And we've built a great team that is absolutely going to do it. And that's what this is going to help us do. And we can't thank both organizations enough. And I know the community will be very appreciative.
You've been with Steve since his diagnosis in 2011. How have you seen his impact through his own fight with ALS?
Seeing Steve and knowing Steve before he was diagnosed with ALS and after, physically they look like two different people. But who they are game changers. If you look at his style on the field, he was a leader. You don't often see somebody playing special teams that stands out, right? Mm-hmm. You think about the quarterback or the middle linebacker or people that are really the faces of an organization at times. And Steve was the face in the locker room, right? He was the guy who communicated and kept everybody focused and in position. And I didn't think that, he could really do more than that after. And somehow he continues to redefine himself. And, all the adversities he's experienced, he's really used it as a tool and a vehicle to help others. He constantly pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Now he's writing a book. I don't know if you heard, but he'll continue to do that. He's an amazing human, a great dad, a great father, husband, friend. And I look forward to everything that he puts his mind towards because it's an unstoppable force.
This combined raffle with the Falcons is just another area that he's getting to kind of continue to provide help for others. It's going to start at the game in Atlanta after the bye week, and then it'll be here available at the stadium the last week of the season when we face the Falcons in week 18.
That's right.
How can fans participate, donate, and get access to this?
Absolutely. Well, I thought about a quote that I remember from Mr. B from some time back is that we're all interconnected and our actions have ripple effects. I think that's a good quote for people to remember as they go and they support this 50-50 raffle and support these two amazing organizations and hopefully gain more awareness and more attention to this disease, ALS, and hopefully other organizations, pick up where these great organizations have left off and actually create something, a bigger mechanism for everybody in every state that has this disease, for every organization, that needs more resources to support their local communities. But you can find all this information on the Saints website. You'll see it in the 50-50 raffle. You'll see it at teamgleason.org. I'm confident saying you'll see it in a lot of places, and there's probably not, I can't list them all.
Where can fans find more information about Team Gleason or get more involved in supporting that initiative?
Absolutely. So we happen to have Gleason Graw this weekend, and so you can go to gleasongraw.org, which will be this upcoming Saturday with great food, great auction items. Thank you, the New Orleans Saints and the Pelicans for supporting.
It's weird. I think Steve knows some people.
Right. He might know a person or two here. But you can go to our website, Gleason Graw or teamgleason.org. And it's important that people know more about the disease and know about what Team Gleason does because ALS is underfunded, under-researched, and not enough people know about it. So at the very least, go poke around. The things that we do and that the amount of people that our team touches and helps is beautiful, amazing. And I think everybody can learn a lot more by just asking or looking it up and coming out and supporting your community.
I hate to put you on the spot, but
Put me
do
on
you
the
know
spot.
the percentage of people that deal with ALS?
So the numbers, unfortunately, seem to be trending up. It used to be every 2 and 50,000, and now don't ask me why it's 2. They could have just,
Right, could have done 1 in
Cor-
25.
correct. But historically, ALS has been a disease that affects older men, and now we see a growing amount of women and actually kids. Juvenile ALS diagnosis is taking place. ALS is a motor neuron disease. In other countries, they call it MND, motor neuron disease. And there's not a lot we know. There's been tremendous strides in the past, I'd say 10 years. But there's a lot more work to be done. So whether it's going to Team Gleason's website or looking up ALS, right? The more people that are focused on this, the younger, better minds. Not that my older mind is any worse than theirs, but these are the generations, our generation, the younger generation will be ones that will hopefully put an end to this thing. Until then, until there's a cure, technology can be that cure, and Team Gleason will continue to do what Steve set us out to do.
I think putting the cause out in front of a football audience is something that's so popular, and bringing attention to it that way will be really good. And hopefully we'll have a lot of success with the donations and the raffle, and then just even bringing more awareness.
And I did want to say this is not a competition by any means, and that is something that we're proud of, that both these organizations are here for individuals, but they're here for community.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the ALS community. We're excited that people are going to show up. We're excited that this has a 50-50 raffle component, but we're very thankful and proud and humbled that these organizations, Mrs. Benson and Mr. Blank, are supporting this cause. That's what the key focus is and should, and hopefully will always be. But we do need resources. We do need financial aid, and we're very thankful. But I want to be very clear that we don't want a competition. We want to change in the future of ALS.
There are times to put the rivalry aside and combine efforts for bigger things, bigger causes, and this is definitely one of them.
The rivalry will be there on the field. Don't get me wrong. But everybody that's participating in person, or watching, everybody plays a part. Mm-hmm. But on that field, it's still a rivalry.
Yes, I agree. I thank you so much for the time and giving us a little more information on this. So we've got Gleason Gras on Saturday.
That's right.
And then the raffle getting started this week. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you and the rest of the Saints organization for continuing to support Steve, Team Gleason, and ALS.
Just some amazing stuff that Steve Gleason and his team has been able to do for those affected by ALS over the years. Saints fans can purchase 50-50 raffle tickets at Mercedes-Benz Stadium at the game against the Falcons on November 26th or at the Superdome Week 18. Tickets can also be purchased online at www.neworleanssaints.com/community/5050. And make sure you check out GleasonGross.org for tickets to this weekend's event. That's Saturday evening at Generations Hall. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.